Ever back something and think that, wow, this game is going to be freaking amazing. This is going to be a perfect fit for what I love, for the mechanisms, the theme, the dynamics, the aesthetic, and then you play it. And then you play it, and the glass just shatters, right? And you're left going, why the deuce didn't this work? Well, I've got 5 for you, for me, that fit that. Let's talk about my crowdfunding woes. So first up, let's talk about this one right here. Put this aside for a second. Let's talk about Lords of Ragnarok. Awakened Realms. They put out some of the best miniatures on the market. But what I have seen, the common prevailing trend with these games, unfortunately, and I was hoping, as someone who did not like Lords of Hellas, I said, okay, this is, you're taking the things that people didn't like about Hellas, you're streamlining it, you're improving it. This is the 2.0 version of it. It's prettier, it's more dynamic, it's more area control. This is really an example of more is not better. When I think of area control games, right? You think of your Blood Rages, your Enos, your El Grandes, even my favorite, Rumble Nation. The depth of the rule book does not determine the greatness of the game. How many things you can cram in mechanistically, action-wise, overhead-wise, does not make a game any better. In fact, I'm going to make the argument nowadays that less is more. I don't need 370 miniatures. I don't need a 35-page rule book. If your game really, really, really requires a 35-page rule book, you better be covering all your bases, your P's, your Q's, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and making sure that it tells you every single step thing you may need, right? And that's been something that has been profoundly lacking in a lot of the Awakened Realms games. The rulebooks have not been overly useful. They have been okay at best. I'm looking at Aetherfields. I'm looking at Tainted Grail. Just the setup of them. Can you pick this rulebook up and know how to do everything in the game element is just almost uniformly not there. That was part of my biggest problem with Aetherfields. And this is better than that, but that's a low bar. I'm not going to say this is a bad game. I can't go that far. The win conditions aren't quite as balanced as you want in an area control game. The runtime is probably similar to Lords of Hellas in the fact that it overstays its welcome. And it's another big box of stuff that just doesn't need to be as big as it is. I just don't need 1,000 components of everything nowadays. And so therein lies the dilemma. For something like this, for the price point, and that may be the ultimate key argument here, for the price point, compared to all of those other ones I previously mentioned, from a time frame standpoint, from an ease and accessibility, from a learning, from a teaching it as well, all of those eclipse this. And that's why I go, I don't need this. I don't need this in my collection at this point. It's just not nearly as fun. It can't get to the table as easy, and I'm going to pay twice as much compared to any one of those at this point to have this in my collection. Yeah, you're going to have a ton of content. I don't need more content. More content does not equate more depth of complexity of the strategy. It can, but it doesn't always. And you don't need it because you're not going to play it 6 times or 7 times in a month anyway to get that full utilization of the meta that this game brings. So that's why it's number 1. Number 2, fighting words today, in case you didn't know it on this video. Earth. It's a crowdfunder backer. I got my copy. I said, wow, action card tableau system, simultaneous play back and forth, resource management. This has all the key things that I just absolutely love. It's dry as a bone. It's absolutely dry as a bone. And by the time you get halfway through this game, how many cards you're flipping, managing resources on, keeping track of on this big grid that you're making that takes up way too much table space. Well, relativistically speaking, of course. It just drags. It just drags from that element. And you're just, doing this on your turn. Oh, and then you're doing this on other people's turns. And it just is a slog. And it's a fun math exercise, if you will, from that aspect of things. But it didn't engage me. It reminds me very eerily, similarly, of Search for Planet X or Tiny Towns, right? I'm not going to fault this game. Again, not a bad game by any means. I was just constantly finding myself going, where's the fun? Am I having fun with this game? And the honest answer was no. Just like with Tiny Towns, right? It's a good mental math spatial exercise, right? To test my mental fortitude. But it didn't engage me in the core of why I love this hobby in the first place, right? To sit down, to have a really enjoyable roll and thwomp on the table in terms of board game content with an interactive experience with those around us. Now, I'm not saying I have to have interaction, right? But to make me feel like I'm having fun with the people around me. And the similarity between all of those three was just that none of them provided that. Heads down, thumbs up sort of games. That's what people, criticize Splendor for being. But, it just left me wanting. And 45 to 90 minutes, yeah, it's going to be on the longer side for a tableau builder as well. Is it a good game? Yes. Is it also something I can see myself parting with and never missing as well? Yeah, which is unfortunate because it really has gotten a lot of hype. It really has gotten a lot of promotion of, whoa! And for me, it just fell completely and utterly flat. And I wanted to love this one because I played Arc Nova right before this. And I said, oh, I see why people like this. Okay. Well, this one's supposed to be better. It got all the hype and hotness. Everyone was ranking this one super high right after it came out on the hotness train. So, there were direct comparisons. There were, things all over the place being shouted. And it just didn't work for me whatsoever, one bit from that side of things. Now, the next one up, this is going to surprise people. This is probably not going to surprise people. The other biggest letdown for me, the one that I said, you know what? I am going to give this another freaking chance. Too Many Bones. I pledged for Unbreakable. Got the little expansion. Got the little promo kit that went along with it. And I said, I am going to learn Unbreakable. This is going to be better. This is going to be, they're going to have upgraded it and made it more accessible. And honestly, I hated it. Complete and utter letdown. And maybe that's on me, right? Because I said, this is going to be somewhat slightly different. It's not. The rules are still, reminding me of my original base game where it's not any easier to learn. It's not any more streamlined. Again, people are going to say, oh, it's not supposed to be streamlined, Chris. You cannot learn this game very well from the rulebook. Just like with Lords of Ragnarok, just like with Aetherfields, these games should be made so that if you have no experience with the game in the first place, you should be able to pick this up, lay it out, and understand how it goes. I am a firm believer that no game requires a video on how to play or explain things. If you can't make a rule book that lays all of that out, maybe you should rethink some of the mechanisms or just the fact that it's not getting in that way in the first place. I know that people love this game. I know that I'm going to take some heat for bashing this, right? There's too much min-maxing. There's too much just pure puzzle optimization. And again, it loses the fun factor of if you don't do it this certain way, your character just isn't going to be successful or successful enough given the constraints of the campaign. Sure, new mechanisms. Sure, new characters. But for the price point, like that's the big thing that I'm seeing, right? The commonality with a lot of these crowdfunding projects. As price point increases, accessibility is significantly decreasing. You're getting more components. You're getting more deluxeified components. If you're like me, though, I have enough components. I don't have enough space. I don't need components. I need Can I get it to the freaking table and enjoy it? I just found myself in a mode of frustration of not having some of those things that are quality of life issues that I would have hoped after about 3 expansions it would have improved upon. At the same time, I know why also that nothing has changed, right? Because you have a core audience that loves it for what it is and, looks past some of its issues and faults and is okay with that. But as someone who's trying to experience that, trying to have that experience that other people have had and open to it, I just can't. And I just haven't. Which, again, I don't buy games to resell them. I don't buy games going, well, if I don't like it, I'll just get rid of it. I hate doing that nowadays. It is such a forking hassle to try and get rid of games that I just don't want it in my collection in the first place. And it's just disappointing all around from that aspect of things. And I hate saying that for something I was hoping I could turn around and have much more pure physical enjoyment on the tabletop with. So that's why it's on the list. The next one on the list, I'm going the completely opposite direction. This is Sail from Allplay. This is a 2-player cooperative trick taker. You lay out your little board, you have your ships sail across when you win a trick, and depending on the symbols that are on the cards in the trick, it's the directionality that it moves it, and you're going to have to navigate it left and right and straight forward and around the Kraken. And then the Kraken's cards are going to go there, and they're going to give you back into the pile, and you're going to have to reshuffle them. But if you get too much damage, then the Kraken wins, and, gives you, I don't know, half a dozen different scenarios you can play. The aesthetic, I really like it. Price point? Yeah. Ease of the rules to get to the table? Check. So what happened, Chris? It's too hard for its own freaking good. This is the epitome of min-maxing in a trick-taking form. I know people will say, well, you're just not playing it right. My wife and I are lifelong euchre players, folks. We know how to trick-take. Lifelong Hearts players living in Michigan. I know trick-taking. This is just incredibly difficult, and it became a lesson in frustration to not be able to get past scenario 2 or 3 without, just basically having to absolutely not miss a beat every single trick in every single hand. And, maybe we're just that bad of gamers, right? But I look at this and I go, okay, if I'm that level of a trick player, you have to be potentially ultra competitive. And you're going, yeah, a lot of people in this hobby, Chris, are ultra competitive. You're just not one of those people, and that's okay. And this game isn't meant for you, and that's awesome. And you know what? It's just bad that it didn't fit for you. And I feel you. And you know what? Awesome. But I look at this, and what worries me is you have people that maybe aren't as cutthroat or aren't as trick-takey as even me and my wife. And then this is a complete no-go as well. And it reminds me, unfortunately, very much of Ghosts of Christmas, their previous trick taker with the Japanese retheme that just kind of got one trick too many in it, if you will. Excuse the pun there. And this one just kind of, again, did the same thing. It felt difficult for the sake of being difficult. I'm all for low win rates, but I'm also all for feeling like you have a chance, especially if things aren't absolutely laid out perfect. And from that aspect of things, it just was disappointing. Last up here of the 5, Bit to Print. Again, I looked at this game flat out and said, you know what? Really love me some Cascadia. Really love me a few of their other lines of games. Backing, currently at the time of filming, Nocturne. It's my light, 45-minute, easy play, easy accessibility style of game in the first place. I love simultaneous action turns. I love real-time playing. I love tile laying. And again, so just like with Sail, right? Checking all of those boxes. And even learning it was super easy. Asymmetric powers for the reporters, journalists in the first place. Who cares? Plus or minus, whatever. Not a make or break it. But we played it. And the feeling of being rushed is never a big deal with real-time playing games. But the feeling like you're rushed and you still have some element of control, immediately in the middle of round 1, we knew it wasn't there. Again, not a bad game, any one of these. But with the whole point of having some control and having to just make rushed and potentially slightly suboptimal decisions, or trying to make and decide if you can make more optimal decisions in the heat of the moment than your opponent, yes, that's what it's about. But instead, the blind grabbing and not being able to manage in any way, again, I'm not a dummy. People I play with are not dummies. The elements on these tiles, you're more concerned about the size of filling in your total sheet than you are the 3 different set collection type symbols on each individual tile in the first place. There's just one too many things going on as a whole. And so there was too much for us at the end of each of the 3 subsequent rounds going, hey, I wonder what my score was in that. I wonder what my score was of the happy sun faces and the frowny faces. Because basically you have to have them, balance each other out. You're paying attention to the colors. You're paying attention to the shapes. You're paying attention to the different types of articles that you're doing. But you're not paying attention to like all of those. You just can't. Which inevitably, 1 or 2 of those scoring columns each time, you just shrug your shoulders at the end of the round and go, well, I hope I did a kind of okay, because I have no clue. That just, it felt like it defeated the purpose of some of the things it was trying to do in the first place. And again, not that we were really disliking it, but we were just kind of like, meh. That's disappointing for a game that, like I said at the beginning, sort of checks all those boxes otherwise in the beginning. So, yeah, another one that I want to love more than I do, and I just can't. So, there you go. 5 crowdfunding disappointments. Do better, Chris. Hopefully, you're having better luck than I am. Because otherwise, wallet pains, right? Collection pains. I hate selling. It's not why I get into this. I want to love it. But sometimes you just can't. There you go. Thanks for watching. Stay classy.